My husband signed the papers on a Tuesday. I remember because it was recycling day, and I could hear the truck outside while the notary was stamping the documents. My mother-in-law was sitting across from him at the kitchen table, her reading glasses on, nodding like she was watching something beautiful unfold. She didn't look at me once. I was standing near the doorway to the hall. I had a mug of coffee in my hand. I didn't say anything. My husband thought he was giving her the house. He didn't know I'd already bought it. Let me back up, because none of this makes sense without the part that came before it. The years of it, actually. The slow accumulation of small moments that I kept telling myself didn't mean what I thought they meant. My husband and I met in our late 20s. He was finishing a civil engineering contract in Calgary. I was working in commercial real estate in Edmonton, and we met through mutual friends at a long weekend at someone's cabin in Invermere. He was funny and easy to talk to, and he made me feel, for the first time in a while, like someone was actually paying attention to me. We dated long distance for about a year. Then I transferred within my firm to the Calgary office, and we moved in together. We got married 3 years later. Small wedding, Canmore, his family, and mine, maybe 60 people. My mother cried. His mother smiled the tight, controlled smile she always wore around me, the one that looked warm in photos but felt, in person, like a door being politely closed. I noticed it early. I want to say that clearly. I noticed it, I named it to myself, and then I talked myself out of believing it mattered. His mother had a particular way of referring to things. Our house was always your son's house when she spoke to her friends on the phone. My job was that real estate thing she does. When I got promoted to senior associate, she sent a card addressed only to her son. When I closed the biggest deal of my career, a mixed-use development in the Beltline worth just over $4 million in commission for our firm, she called to congratulate him for supporting me during a stressful time. He laughed it off. That's just how she is. She doesn't mean anything by it. You know she loves you. I did know she was fond of me in the abstract way someone is fond of a piece of furniture that came with the house. Tolerated. Present, not chosen. We bought the house in 2019. It was a detached infill in Inglewood, close to the river. Good bones. A neighborhood I knew was only going to go up. The down payment came almost entirely from me. I had been saving since my mid-20s with the kind of focus that people sometimes found unsettling. I drove a used Civic until it had 230,000 kilometers on it. I cooked at home most nights. I maxed my TFSA and RRSP every year without fail. My husband earned a good salary, but he was, by his own admission, a spender. Nice dinners. Gear for hobbies he dropped after a season. A very expensive road bike that lived in the garage for 2 years before he sold it for a fraction of what he paid. The down payment was $340,000. I put in $300. He put in $40. We agreed that the mortgage would be in both names. We agreed it was our home. I believed that at the time. I want to be honest about that. I wasn't calculating anything. I was just in love with someone and buying a house and trying to build something. The problems started, the way they always do, gradually and then all at once. His mother's health declined in 2021. Nothing immediately serious, but she was getting older. She'd had a fall. She was living alone in Red Deer in a house that was getting harder to maintain. The reasonable solution, the one I actually suggested first, was that we help her find a good retirement community, somewhere with support staff and activities and people her own age. I researched 3 options. I printed out the information. I sat down with my husband on a Sunday afternoon with tea and a color-coded comparison chart, and I walked him through all of it. He looked at the papers for a while. Then he said, "I think she should just move in with us." I asked him when he had decided that. He said he'd been thinking about it for a few weeks. I asked him why he hadn't mentioned it. He said he was mentioning it now. That was the conversation. We talked for another hour, or I talked, and he mostly nodded and said things like, "I hear you, and I know it's not ideal, and let's just try it and see." She moved into our spare bedroom 6 weeks later. She brought a lot of furniture. Some of it replaced things I owned. For the first few months, I told myself it was an adjustment period. I work long hours. I'm out of the house by 7:30 most mornings and often not back until 7 or later. When I came home, there was usually dinner, already made, which I thought was meant to be kind, until I realized the dinners were always things my husband liked and never things I had mentioned liking. When I said something once, gently, I thought about maybe doing pasta on Thursdays because it was something I'd always loved. She looked at me with that polite smile and said, "Oh, I didn't realize you felt so strongly about it." The small things aren't interesting to describe. They compound, is the point. The way she repositioned herself as the authority on everything in that house. The way my husband started deferring to her on decisions that had nothing to do with her. The renovation she suggested for the back deck that he approved without asking me. The Christmas she organized at our house, where my family was seated at the table farthest from the kitchen, and hers were in every photo on the mantel. I started staying later at work. Not to avoid going home, I told myself. Just because there was a lot going on. There was a lot going on. In early 2022, my firm restructured. I was offered a choice: stay at my current level, or move into a new development acquisitions role that came with a significant salary increase, but also an equity stake option, the chance to buy into a portfolio of properties the firm was building. It was not a small decision. The buy-in was substantial. It would mean tying up a significant portion of my liquid savings. I talked to my husband about it. He was cautious. He thought it was risky. He said we should think about it more carefully, given that his mother's care costs were probably going to increase over the coming years, and he wanted to make sure we had a cushion. His mother's care costs. I thought about that phrase for a long time after. I took the equity stake. I did not tell him I had made the final decision until it was done. That was the first time I had done something like that, something significant, financial, without looping him in fully. I want to be accurate about what it felt like. It felt like relief. The acquisition went well. The portfolio performed above projection. By late 2022, my equity position had grown considerably. By early 2023, I was making more from the portfolio than I was from my base salary. My name was the one attached to the deals. My name was the one attached to the deals. My network, my instincts, my 10-hour days. At home, my mother-in-law started referring to the house as the family home, as in, it's important for the family home to feel welcoming. As in, I was thinking we could change the layout of the family home to give me a bit more space to have my friends over. As in, when we're gone, the family home should stay in the family. I heard that last one from my husband directly. He brought it up one evening in what I think he thought was a casual way. He said his mother had been thinking about legacy planning and it would mean a lot to her, and to him, to know that the house would stay connected to his side of things. His sister's kids were young. There was a lot of family feeling around the property. I asked him what exactly he was suggesting. He said maybe we could look at putting the house in a family trust. His family's trust. The house that I had paid for. The house in a trust that I would not control. I said I'd think about it. That night, I called a lawyer. Not a family friend, not someone referred through my office, but a real estate and estate planning lawyer in a firm downtown that had no connection to anyone I knew. I made an appointment for the following week. I went alone on my lunch break, and I told her everything. What she told me next changed the way I looked at the previous 4 years. Because I had contributed the dominant share of the down payment, and because I had documentation, bank records, transfer records, everything, there was a legal argument to be made around constructive trust and proportional ownership interest. It wasn't simple. It would depend on how the title was structured and what a court might decide about contributions. But she told me there was a path. Not a path to fight. A path to protect myself. Over the following months, my lawyer and I worked carefully and methodically. I won't walk through every step because some of it is still sensitive, but the short version is this. The mortgage was refinanced. I used my own funds to buy out the remaining equity at a fair valuation, and through a legitimate and fully documented legal process. The title was transferred into a holding structure that I controlled. My husband was aware that a refinancing was happening. I told him that. What he did not understand, because he did not ask questions and did not read the documents I put in front of him, was what the structure meant. He signed what his own lawyer, a junior associate at a firm his mother had recommended, told him to sign. That part is important. He had representation. He had the opportunity to understand what was in front of him. He chose not to engage closely. That is not something I did to him. That is something he did to himself. I want to say here that I was not happy about any of this. I was not running some long game from the beginning. I was someone who had spent 4 years pouring myself into a life that was being systematically treated as secondary, and I had finally decided to stop. In March of last year, my husband sat down at our kitchen table with his mother and a notary his mother had arranged. His mother had found someone who would draft a deed of gift, a document transferring his interest in the house to her. The plan, as I understood it later, was that this would be done quickly and quietly, and presented to me as a fait accompli. I was home. I had taken the morning off. I sat in the chair by the window with my coffee and I waited. The notary went through the paperwork. My mother-in-law had her reading glasses on. My husband had a pen in his hand. My lawyer walked in through the front door. I had given her a key. She set a folder on the table. She introduced herself by name, stated her firm, and explained calmly that she was there to clarify a matter of title before any documents were executed. She opened the folder. She laid 3 pages on the table. She said the property at this address had been held in a numbered company for the past 11 months, and that the sole director and shareholder of that company was me. She said there was no mortgage registered against the property. She said any transfer document executed today would be legally void because my husband held no ownership interest to transfer. He looked at the papers. He looked at me. I didn't say anything. I took a sip of my coffee. His mother said, "This is not possible." My lawyer said it was, in fact, fully documented and registered with the Land Titles Office. My mother-in-law looked at me then, for maybe the first time in years, like I was actually there. She said I had deceived them. I said I had protected myself. There was a long silence. My husband asked me when. I told him the date the transfer completed. He sat back in his chair. He didn't say anything for a while. The notary quietly began gathering her papers. She looked like someone who had walked into a room expecting a routine afternoon and was now carefully not making eye contact with anyone. My mother-in-law left about 40 minutes later. She said she needed air. She took her coat from the hook by the door, the hook she had installed without asking me the previous fall, and she left. My husband and I sat in the kitchen for a long time. He said he didn't understand how this had happened. I told him I would explain everything, but that first I needed him to understand what had been happening for 4 years, not as an accusation, just as information. I needed him to know that I had not invented it, had not exaggerated it, had not been oversensitive. I needed him to understand that his mother had spent the better part of 4 years treating me as peripheral to my own life, and that he had let her. He was quiet for a long time. He said he thought I was okay with it. I asked him why he thought that. He said because I never left. That hit me somewhere I wasn't expecting. Because he was right, in a way. I had stayed. I had stayed and adapted and shrunk myself and gotten quieter, and he had interpreted all of that as acceptance, because it was easier than asking. We are separated now. It happened in stages, no single dramatic moment, just the slow settling of a decision that had already been made. He moved out in the fall. He's in an apartment in Marteloup. His mother went back to Red Deer. I don't know what their relationship looks like now. I don't ask. The house is mine. I know every corner of it. The original hardwood under the carpet in the second bedroom, the radiator that ticks in winter, the kitchen window that faces east and fills the whole room with light in the morning. I bought a new coffee mug. A simple one, white with a small chip on the handle because I dropped it once. I kept it anyway. I'm not angry anymore. I want to say that, and have it be true, and mostly it is. There's still a residue sometimes. Late evenings when I'm tired, or when I drive past a restaurant we used to go to, or when I call my mother and hear something careful in her voice that tells me she's still not sure what to say. But the anger underneath all of it, the cold and heavy kind that I had been carrying for so long. It started to feel like my normal resting weight. That's gone. The house is quiet in the mornings. I make coffee. I open the kitchen window if it's warm enough. I sit at the table that I chose, in the house that is mine, and I think about what I want to do with the day. That's enough. For right now, that's more than enough.